I'm sorry.
It's 10 a.m. on March
Okay.
12th. And we're going to open up the policy meeting.
This isn't good.
First thing on the agenda is policy 218, student discipline. Elizabeth wanted to talk about this, and then I read the student policy handbook. And I checked this out. And I think there's some things that we need to discuss if we can. I didn't see anywhere in this policy about fighting.
About in policy 218?
Yeah,
No, because it says we follow the code of
Student,
conduct in the student
yeah.
handbook.
in the code of conduct for the student handbook. I made some notes here. On page 46, 47, and 51. It
Sorry,
made
what were those pages? I'm sorry, let me write it down so I can look at it later.
46,
46,
47,
47,
and 51.
student handbook, the current.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I want to know your thoughts on this. Or was the stuff on fighting
Mhm.
was very vague.
Mhm.
Is it possible to add something in there per se, like a 3-strike rule? If you involved in an altercation with fighting, first time, then you get the discussion. Second time you're involved in some, third time or second time you're suspended 3 days, third time you're suspended more or whatever. Everything in the handbook is very vague, and there's actually lesser things that are even worse than the student fighting. And I think if a student throws a punch, except for in self-defense, there needs to be strict discipline, and we need to put the hammer down on all of this that's going on.
I would, may I?
Yeah,
I totally agree right now, unless something else comes up, but I would be curious to see, I never looked at other school districts. And what other school districts, and I'm not just saying regional school districts, I'm talking about the top 10 public school districts in Pennsylvania. How they address this.
What do you mean by top 10?
Um,
Because the context matters.
they're rated, by the rating, by the state rating. Just to see if there's any major difference or some inclusion that they have. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't looked at that, but I am curious just to see, but I do like the idea of what Chris was saying, that unless it is self-defense, obviously, if there is an intentional contact with another individual, that there's a very defined line there. So if you could think about that and talk to your team and see, maybe in the security committee, I don't know what that is, but whatever it is that would be reasonable, but still very clear cut, I think would really help us in the long run and short run.
Thank you. I think we're on the same page in that we want to make sure that our hallways and every places that students are safe and students feel protected and supported. There's a tough balance trying to figure out where that that discretion is that we're required to have by state law.
Sure.
In terms of looking at every individual situation and really kind of diving into the details to figure out what led up to it, right? And what is the student's background? The 3-strike rules are broadly not very effective. It's much better to have something where the principal looks at past history. So the idea of progressive discipline is kind of in the same vein as the
Sure.
3-strike kind of a thing, but it's
Sure.
not quite so rigid.
Right,
I know that Nick and his team, same as Dave and his team in the middle school, really pays attention to context and progressive discipline. So the students that we'll be talking about on Thursday, you'll hear about that progressive discipline and history and all that sort of thing. I think that we're doing a pretty good job of taking the context into account when we're working with students who have violated the code of conduct and assigning punitive discipline to the students. And you've heard it from the students who are here. I've heard it in the hallways. I've heard it from teachers. Nick has said the same thing. We're seeing it in the data that the number of significant referrals for this kind of thing has vastly decreased
Sure.
because the
That's-
students who are so far into this antisocial behavior or anti-supportive of the school district or anti-community behavior, those students we're bringing up for expulsion and the kids are seeing it.
That's,
And so the behavior is changing. There are fewer students who are getting into that whole realm of doing things they shouldn't do. I don't think our system is broken. I do think that every year we take a hard look at this, at the data to see what are we doing and what are the results of that? And then putting that up against our code of conduct in the handbook to see if there are any adjustments that we can make. This morning, I recognize it was this morning, but I just got this information that I put in the public content on the agenda that looks through Pennsylvania law
mhm.
and talks about the idea of discretion that we need to have. So going from, if you bring a weapon to school, you're expelled forever. Well, the state said, no, that's not, the zero tolerance thing doesn't make any sense. And so what's the mandate to school administration is to look into the context and the nuance and figure out what's behind it. And again, I think we're doing a pretty good job on that. And it's something that I know between Christina and myself and Randy and Nick and his team and Dave and his team in the middle school, we're talking about these sort of disciplinary responses that we have for students who are doing things they shouldn't.
I understand you say things are getting better, but I'm hearing when people contacted me saying that there's a ton of stuff going on, which there's gonna be regardless. But I'm just wondering if we tightened the belt and got a little tougher, if it wouldn't make people think twice.
If we tighten the belt on the whole system and there's a small subset of the people who are acting out and need to be held accountable, then it is harmful to the overall community. If these people that you're talking about that are saying things are going wrong are contacting the teacher, if it's in a classroom, the principal, and if they don't get any satisfaction coming to me, if they follow that chain, then we can address those individual issues. It's the same kind of
Okay.
thing of, you know, if somebody's speeding, we don't tell everybody they can only go 45 on the freeways because a couple of people are going 80.
All right, well, I think it needs to be looked at a little bit more.
Like I said, we
Because
look at
there's a
it,
lot going on. I think that I'm being told of all kinds of stuff happening on the buses.
okay,
And people say, when I say, call the school, they don't want to because nothing gets done. So.
I can't do anything that I don't know anything about. right?
Understand that,
And so
so-
if I set up a whole bunch of disciplinary things on top of what we're already doing, and I still don't know what's going on in the bus, it's not gonna make a difference,
But there's always room for improvement.
for sure. And that's why we look at this annually. And it's a conversation we have almost continuously about how are we making sure that our response to these students who are behaving in ways they shouldn't is appropriate.
Because when we have incidents happen like just did, this is the second major one in a year and a half. And the first one, you weren't here yet. But, we just need to figure a way. I know nothing's guaranteed. But there's also a lot of people that laugh at our system, so just bringing it to your awareness.
Right. I recognize that this comment is going to come across as hyperbolic, and I don't intend it to be so. Establishing a police state in the school is not helpful to our culture.
Understand that.
And so we have to find the right balance for that. And like I said, it's a continual conversation.
Understand that. And it's not a police state, it's just letting students know, hey, you do this, there's gonna be serious consequences.
Which is
not-
what we're doing.
Not just patting them the whole way down till we can't take it anymore.
Well, these students here that you're gonna be hearing about on Thursday are a precise example of what you're talking about.
Okay, all right.
If we could keep this on the agenda for next month, and now that we've had this conversation, just for my own research, I would like to look at some other school districts. Would that be okay? Because then we could talk about, the reintroduction plan for some of these students. Maybe there's something there. I'm not saying they haven't been doing a good job, the team. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there might be something, the code of conduct, the reintroduction plan, maybe that's something that could be tightened up. I don't know at this point. I just know that the community wants us to really keep this on the radar. So even if there's one little sentence that gets added, I don't know what that is right now,
Okay.
but I know we can do it. I know we can do it. Okay, does that sound all right, Chair?
That's fine with me.
Okay, I will look at those other school districts and
We'll
and I'll
just
share if I find anything worthy of
Look and
reading.
see if we're missing anything.
Yeah,
That's-
I'll
doesn't
do
hurt.
that.
Nothing wrong with
Okay.
that.
All right, let's move on to 625. The procurement cards under 600 finances. Dr. Redmond, you wanna talk to us about this?
As far as I know, there was a question that came up about procurement cards and what we're doing. Elizabeth, I believe that was your question that came up originally. So this is our current policy
Mhm.
that was adopted in 2021. And then during our most recent financial audit, they also looked at procurement cards and checked to make sure that we had a policy, and we have the AR 625 AR that looks at the employee usage agreement, and we have both of those things in place. So Elizabeth, was there something more specific about this that you were looking for?
Yes, actually, here's looking at other school districts. I won't go through the whole list, but there were some key ones that were very good. Well, number one was the PSBA 625 AR recommendations, the new ones that I shared with you last month. Okay, so I looked at those. I looked at our policy. I compared that to Radnor, Williamsport. I'm just picking out the big ones. I'll just stick with those two. And they were very similar, of course, because they use Board Docs and the same PSBA, but they did have some other interesting things in them. And I will say this, looking at our current policy, here's what I'm thinking to further discuss, and we can think about it today, maybe open up a discussion, then get back to it next month. Here's a list of tentative goals for you to consider, okay? And these are coming from also from the community, not just from myself. Number one, within reason, of course, so you can operate. Number one, limit access to procurement cards.
Is the assumption that we're not limiting access to procurement?
Well,
cards?
I'm making a tentative list. It's not in the policy. Limit usage for the procurement cards unless deemed absolutely necessary. And then the business manager, prior to any purchase, unless it's an emergency, obviously, the business manager shall review the request, and then the business manager or designee is responsible to approve that usage of that particular procurement card.
It seems to me there's some unfamiliarity perhaps with our process. So
Well,
because the
these are things for
may I
the
finish?
policy,
So,
yes, okay.
the things that we already have in place are
Mhm.
things that you're talking about. So perhaps, the financial, Joni and Christy are at PASBO, it's
Sure.
the annual conference, so they couldn't come here to speak to this. Perhaps it would make sense for me to have them come talk through all of that stuff, so you have a more robust understanding, because as I said, the stuff you're talking about, we already do.
I'm
Yeah,
sure,
cause I see here, it says supervisor reviews the statement and signs approval.
Mhm.
Now, who's considered the supervisor? You are?
Eventually, so I sign off on the ones that are coming through mine, but it all goes through the financial office.
Okay,
So we do ask for prior approval for them, and the number of folks who have access to the procurement cards is fairly limited. We have that list if you want to see
is
who
there
has
a
access to them.
limit set on those cards?
that's,
I'm sure there is. I don't know what it
Well,
is off
that-
the top of my head, but
Okay, and then the only other question I had on it, and it's only because I ran into this somewhere else. Do the courts accrue points or cash back or mileage
cards.
rewards? Huh?
the card, you said courts.
The cards.
The cards.
I'm sorry,
I don't know off the top of my head. I would be surprised if they do. I don't know.
cause if they do, I'd just like to be curious where the benefits of using those cards comes back to.
I don't believe that there are any of those kind of extra incentive ones, because it's more of a business account than it is personal accounts, but we can again,
Just
Joni
a
and Christy can
question.
speak to that. Yeah.
okay, should I keep going?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, also in the policy, so these are just things that I'm listing for further discussion. Having them here next month, this would be perfect. At least they're gonna be aware of some of these discussion items and how we're gonna, or if we're going to put any of those items directly into the policy. Now I know they do this, but maybe this, again, about the policy. Tabulate the credit card usage monthly. Obviously, I know they do that, but
That wouldn't be in policy anyway. That's just kind of,
okay, well, I'll just go through the list and then you'll see whether or not it might be a reasonable thing to put in the policy.
okay.
Then of course, the list of the monthly expenses, but then the final summary report by building and by department, because for the board, not every little $5 pen purchase, but I'm just saying Woodward Township Building, procurement card usage, final amount. High school, final amount. And then that could be segued prior to the board shall, which is already in our policy, the board shall approve the list of employees authorized, which I don't remember ever doing that, but I'm sure it happened. But then include this word under authority, under our current policy of 625. The second paragraph, the board shall, and then just add in one little word, annually approve the list of employees authorized, because that would at least give a directive that we all understand.
Okay.
I've never approved a list of that.
I don't remember doing it either, but be that as it may, we're moving forward, right?
So
Yeah.
it would be helpful if you could send me an email, send that list of things that you have to Christine and to me so that we can have that.
That'd
so
be
we're not
great.
missing
Yeah, yeah.
Everything. And then also some of the things you're talking about go a bit beyond the board purview, like the specifics. It's a bit too far for what the board typically looks at, because you approve the budget and then kind of monitor the budget, getting into the really specifics of the how the procurement cards are used and that kind of micro detail isn't typically a board issue.
Mhm.
Because you look at things more in the aggregate and not in the specific. So again, send me the list of things. We'll have Joni and Christy, or one of the two of them at least, here in
Sure,
our next
but
policy.
I think you misunderstood, Dr. Evan. No, this isn't about micromanaging or anything like that. It's just that the idea is in the policy for discussion when they come is, since we are supposed to be annually or approving which employees actually have access to this card,
Mhm,
okay, that's in our policy.
mhm.
Then for evaluation purposes, that's where the annual report comes in for us to evaluate what had happened the prior year. Now, whether or not that's information a board will ever use, but just so there's some sort of evaluation to balance it out. That's all. It's not anything more than, it's not looking at every receipt. It's just evaluating it.
Okay.
So there's
again,
a report.
If you just
Yeah, I
send me
will.
that. and
Send
what it is
that,
you're
send
trying
that to him because I'm not gonna micromanage, but
No,
as a
mm-mm.
board member that's responsible for anything and everything, we at least need to be on the page where we know what's happening.
Mhm. And
So,
I'll-
so normally, the way that works is that you would ask myself or Joni for an assessment of the procurement card procedures and usage, and our assessment of whether or not it's working, and some evidence about what that looks like. And maybe we're saying the same thing in different ways, but
Yeah.
Sure.
that's typically about the limit of the level at which the board should be involved in that
Do
kind of
we
thing.
even know how many cards are out there?
I'm sure Joni does. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. And I see the employee usage agreement. I'm okay with that,
Mhm.
as long as it is on file.
Yeah, if it's online too, so you're not having all the paper, that'd be great. An online, I mean, that's your thing, but I'm just saying if we get more online, so they can just filling it out, you have it. But the other one is the 6/25 ARPSBA recommendations. There are some really good recommendations in here that I'm just requesting you folks, take a look at. And
Is that for AR zero or
6/25
AR?
R0, yes,
Okay,
the one
and
that I sent to you last month.
That's on here.
Is that different than the one we have attached to the agenda?
Oh, let me just make sure, so
No, it's the same one.
yeah, this isn't the PSBA one that they sent to us that I forwarded to you.
May I see that one?
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you're
yeah.
Looking at here.
Yeah, that's the one I emailed to you last month. So that'll give you a month to look it over again. Because they did add some very interesting, which I thought very helpful things, granted, it is more text.
Oh, this is, okay, this is a different thing. All right, so this is the employee usage form and
Mhm.
okay, this is a different, let me see here.
Okay. Because then once you have a chance to review this, we could put it for next month and then actually put it on board docs, then you have plenty of time to, I think they brought up some really key things that are very helpful and yet still reasonable. We'll get there.
I have not seen that one that you're showing, but.
Yeah, it's the one I emailed everyone last, but don't worry about it. Okay, I'll just email it out again. It came directly from PSBA.
Okay,
And this was really good to have too, that they had in there was this one, the 6/25, and I know we do have this in our board policies already, but it was really good that they had them together. It was, but then we also
that's
have it somewhere
626.
else.
That's in 626.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's already in there, but I just thought it was nice that it mentioned it. But don't worry about it. So we're getting there. So if we could maybe table that until everyone can see have time to read.
626. Programs.
But I do think the one big thing though that we can do is just add that one word in there. For our current one as a pending at 6/25, the second paragraph, the board shall, and just add that one word annually. Or if you prefer, say the month of May or however you want it, just so it doesn't get lost in all the noise. So I will send you Radner's. I will send you, resend the PSBA one. I've got my homework.
Okay,
And that should, I think, really help clear things up, but we'll get there. Send Radner. Okay.
Okay. I don't think we have anything else.
May I ask a quick question?
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So how did we end the policy 218 student discipline? Are we just gonna keep everything as is, or are we gonna?
You said you wanted to keep it on here and you were going
Yeah.
to look at other school
And
districts.
you
Right.
wanted to see what other school districts are
Right, so
doing.
that's okay?
And
We're
you're
all
gonna
good with
come
that?
back,
Okay,
yeah.
just wanna make a check. Thank you, just so we're on the same page.
All
Okay,
right.
good.
So
That
that's
it?
coming back in April then, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so is 625 policy and 625 AR. So
Well,
they're
if-
all,
The AR,
If
I
you
don't think
want-
needs to come
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
if
so-
that's
it's,
right.
yeah,
Just 625.
so but
Mhm.
those two are tabled.
Yeah, we'll table it and look at it again.
Okay, and until April.
All right.
all right, great. Thank you so
Anybody got
much.
anything else? All right, thanks. We'll end this meeting at 10:26.